Night after night, the hospital parking lot sat still, bathed in the cold glow of fluorescent lights. For most, it was just another lot, nothing special. But for her, it had become a place of unease, because of one car. It wasn't the car itself that caught her attention. It was the way it was always there, parked in the same spot, as if waiting. At first, she thought nothing of it, but after a few nights, it became hard to ignore. For days, the car was there, a constant presence, always in the same spot. No one ever got in or out, not that she could see, at least. But the longer it stayed, the more it gnawed at her. Was it just a coincidence, or was someone watching her? She told herself it was nothing, maybe just another late-shift worker. But every time she saw the car, that creeping feeling of being watched grew stronger. It was starting to feel personal. One night she couldn't take it anymore. Curiosity, mixed with fear, pushed her closer. She needed to know. Was someone inside? Was it all in her head? Or was the car more than just a coincidence? She approached slowly, her heart racing with each step. Her mind ran wild with possibilities. What if someone was inside? What if they had been watching her this whole time? The car was empty. No one inside. No signs of life. Just an ordinary car, like any other in the lot. But the relief didn't last, because something about it still didn't feel right. She had almost forgotten about the car by the time she drove home that night. The rain tapped rhythmically against the windshield, and the road was empty, except for one set of headlights. At first, it seemed like any other car on the road, but after a few blocks, she noticed it. A familiar shape, the same car, with the same dark windows, following her. Her heart pounded in her chest. The car didn't pass her. It didn't slow down. It stayed just close enough to make her feel trapped, her stomach twisting with fear. Her pulse quickened, her breath coming in short gasps. She tried to stay calm, but the car wasn't going away. Every turn she made, it followed. Every move she made, it mirrored. She pulled into a gas station, hoping, praying that the car would just pass her by. But it didn't. It pulled in too, far enough to keep its distance, but close enough to send a message. She couldn't wait any longer. She had to get away. Her foot pressed hard on the gas, her tires screeching against the wet pavement. The car followed without hesitation. Every corner she turned, it was there. Every shortcut she took, it followed. No matter how fast she drove, how many turns she made, the car stayed with her, like it had been waiting for this moment. She had made it home, finally free of the car that had stalked her through the night. But the relief was short-lived. Because as she locked the door behind her, something didn't feel right. She looked outside, half expecting to see the car parked on the street, but it wasn't there. Still, the uneasy feeling clung to her, like the shadows outside her window. She thought she had escaped, but some stalkers don't stop when you reach your door. Some of them just wait for the right moment. It's the middle of the night at an industrial plant. The workers have long since gone home, and the facility sits silent, except for one person. A night guard tasked with patrolling the vast, empty grounds, ensuring everything stays as it should. But tonight, something is wrong. The usual night guard has vanished, and what remains behind suggests that he didn't just leave on his own. A replacement guard had been called in. He wasn't supposed to be here tonight, but the regular guard, a man known for his punctuality, had failed to show up for his scheduled rounds. No one could reach him. No calls, no messages, just silence. At first he thought it was nothing. Maybe the guy had gotten sick or had a family emergency. But the eerie silence of the plant felt off. He couldn't shake the strange sense that something wasn't right. The replacement began his rounds. His job was simple: check the doors, the equipment, and the perimeter. But as he walked deeper into the plant, the eerie quiet seemed to press in on him. Where was the regular guard? He tried to shake it off. Maybe the camera was just malfunctioning. But as he reached the heart of the plant, the main floor where the machinery stood idle, he found something that sent a chill down his spine. That keyring belonged to the missing guard. He recognized it immediately. It was standard issue, and the initials scratched into the metal were unmistakable. But where was the guard? And why had his walkie-talkie been broken and left behind? Something had happened here, but there were no clear answers, just clues. Clues that suggested the regular guard hadn't left voluntarily. He wasn't sure why, but something told him to head toward the far side of the plant. It was the part that hadn't been used in years, the older machinery gathering dust, its purpose long forgotten. But tonight, it felt different. As he moved deeper into the darkened maze of machinery, he noticed something strange, a trail of scuffed footprints in the dust. Footprints that led deeper into the shadows. At first, he wasn't sure what he was seeing, but as he stepped closer, the beam of his flashlight revealed something chilling. There, crumpled between two pieces of rusted machinery, was the missing guard. He wasn't moving. The replacement's heart pounded in his chest as he crouched down, calling out the missing guard's name. But there was no response, just the eerie silence of the plant, pressing in on him like a suffocating weight. Panic set in. He needed to call for help, but his phone was useless down here. He was completely cut off, alone in this massive, silent facility, and as he backed away from the body, a terrifying thought crept into his mind. Whatever happened to the missing guard might still be in the plant. He had to get out. He had to call for help. But as he ran through the labyrinth of machinery and dark corridors, every corner seemed to shift. Every shadow seemed to hide something sinister. The exit was close, but so was something else. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoing in the darkness behind him. He didn't dare look back. The police arrived at dawn. They found the body of the missing guard, but no sign of anyone else. No clues as to what had happened, just an eerie silence that still clung to the plant like a fog. But the replacement knew the truth. Something had been there that night, something lurking in the shadows, waiting, and he had barely escaped with his life. Working the night shift. Most people think of it as a slow, uneventful stretch of time. A few customers here and there, long hours of silence. But for one store clerk, that quiet night would turn into something far more sinister. It was a typical night at the 24-hour convenience store, the graveyard shift, the hours between midnight and sunrise, when the world feels like it's holding its breath. The air is heavy with the silence of the night. The night shift worker wasn't alone. Her male co-worker was in the back, sorting inventory in the storage room. A routine task, nothing out of the ordinary. Until something changed. But after 20 minutes, something began to feel off. Her co-worker should have been back by now. At first, she thought maybe he was taking longer than usual. It happens. Maybe he got distracted, lost in the monotonous task of restocking. But there was this nagging feeling, something pulling her toward the back. She called out her co-worker's name. No response. The silence seemed to thicken, the store growing quieter, if that was even possible. She stepped into the storage room, the cold air hitting her immediately. It was too quiet. The faint hum of the store's freezers was the only sound left. But something wasn't right. The room was empty. The boxes were untouched. Her co-worker was gone. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The worker's heart started to race. This was no longer just a feeling. It was real. Her co-worker had been in this room less than an hour ago. Where could he have gone? She checked the security cameras. They showed her co-worker entering the room, the door closing behind him. But that's it. No one came out. No one left. It didn't make sense. There were no exits, no other ways out. The only door was locked from the inside. And yet, he was gone. She searched every corner, every shelf, every shadow. Nothing. It was as if the room had swallowed her co-worker whole. That's when she saw it. Scuff marks on the floor, like something had been dragged. They led to a pile of boxes, stacked high in the far corner. Her hands trembled as she moved them aside. A hidden passage, leading down into the darkness. Her mind raced with questions. How had no one ever noticed this before? Where did it lead? And could this be where her coworker had gone? She knew she had no choice. She had to find him. But as she descended into the unknown, the walls seemed to close in. The air became colder, thicker, suffocating. Then, she heard it. Footsteps. Someone, something, was down here with her. She wasn't alone. She ran, heart pounding, as shadows danced on the walls. Something was moving ahead, but she couldn't see it. Every step echoed louder, every second ticking closer to danger. Her coworker stood there, unmoving, his eyes hollow, as if something had taken him. He wasn't the same person who had walked into the storage room earlier that night. And then, the light went out. What happened that night remains a mystery. Some say it was an accident. Others believe something far darker was at play. If you like the stories so far, please support us. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell icon. Now back to our final story. Working the night shift at a remote motel wasn't exactly what she'd dreamed of, but it was quiet, and that was something she liked. Most nights it was just her, a cup of stale coffee, and the distant hum of passing cars. But tonight something was different. He walked in just past midnight. From the moment the stranger stepped inside, she felt it, that unshakable sense that something was wrong. He didn't look like the typical guests who passed through. The man was tall, his face cast in shadow beneath his hat. His voice was low, almost a whisper, as he asked for a room. There was something about him, something in the way he moved, that made her skin crawl. The check-in was quick, too quick. He took the key without so much as a glance in her direction and headed down the hallway. But as she watched him disappear, a chill ran down her spine. Something about the whole encounter felt wrong. Hours passed, but the unease lingered. The rain outside had grown heavier, tapping insistently against the window. On the surface, everything seemed normal, but her gut told her otherwise. She couldn't stop glancing at the security monitor, half expecting to see something. A figure, just a flicker of movement on the screen, or so she thought. But when she blinked and looked again, the hallway was empty. Was it her imagination playing tricks, or was something more sinister at play? She knew she shouldn't. He hadn't done anything wrong, at least not yet, but something told her to knock, to make sure everything was all right. She couldn't ignore the prickling at the back of her neck, the feeling that someone was watching her. No response. She knocked again, her pulse quickening. Still nothing. She almost turned to leave, but then, the door creaked open, just a crack. Something about the way the door opened made her stomach drop. She couldn't see anything inside, just shadows. And then, from within that darkness, came the stranger's voice, low, disturbingly calm. Whatever he said, it made her take a step back. It wasn't the words themselves, it was the way he spoke. Quiet, cold. She had the sudden, overwhelming urge to run. Back at her desk, she tried to shake the feeling, tried to convince herself that she was overreacting, but the fear wouldn't go away. Who was that man in room 12? Why had his voice sent a chill down her spine? Her instincts told her to check the records. When she looked at the name he'd given, it seemed wrong. A fake name, like he was hiding something. Her mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. A loud crash from down the hall cut through the tension. She jumped, her heart pounding in her chest. The noise came from the stranger's room. Her pulse quickened as she approached the door, now cracked open. She hesitated, every instinct screaming at her to turn back, but she pushed forward. She had to know what was behind that door. The room was in chaos, furniture knocked over, the window thrown open, rain pouring in. But there was no sign of the guest. He had vanished. That's when she found it. A notebook, worn and battered, half hidden under the bed. She flipped through the pages, and what she saw made her blood run cold. It wasn't just any notebook. It was a list. Names, addresses, victims, and at the very bottom, her own name, circled in red. In that moment, she realized the guest wasn't just a suspicious stranger. He was something far worse. And now, he was out there, somewhere in the storm, watching her. Thank you for watching. See you on our next video.